Oh. All right,
I'm going to start that over.
please.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of McCandless Planning Commission meeting for March 4, 2025. We have 3 or 4 items on the agenda. The first one being the Blazer Drive subdivision plan number 5, amendment number 2, mortgage subdivision. Do we have a presentation?
I don't see anybody in the audience, but here, I'll just pull this up. So this is another one of the McCandless Square Phase 3 townhome chop-ups, more officially known nowadays as a mortgage subdivision. These are the units that are right at the elbow of Hopkins Street.
Okay,
And it's just this block of townhomes here that they're looking to subdivide. Next month, I believe you have another block coming in, but it's just this one for now. I believe the engineer's letters were clear at this point. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a pretty.
looks to
open
be
shop.
straightforward.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with what was at one time going to be a retail section.
No, that's phase 2. This is
Okay.
Phase 3.
We're still in the townhome section. All right. Is there any public comment concerning this relatively perfunctory subdivision? I hear none. So we need a motion to approve the Blazer Drive subdivision plan number 5, amendment number 2, mortgage subdivision application as submitted by Sperdute Surveying, if I'm pronouncing that right. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Sean moves. We have a second. Second from Shelley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition, all in favor. Item number 2. This is the Hilltop Lane lot line revision for the addresses of 10,030 and 10,050 Hilltop Lane. Is there any presentation regarding this?
We do have a quick note. I believe we got an email today.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So the town received an email this afternoon from the applicant's designer that they wanted to make some adjustments to the plan and were voluntarily tabling themselves this month.
Okay,
I'm not sure what. This is a pretty straightforward one that we would have probably recommended giving a thumbs up at this point had they wanted to move it forward. but they tabled themselves. So I imagine you'll get those revisions for next month's meeting.
okay,
And Kelly will advise you if anything really earth shattering has occurred to change.
Yeah, we'll identify what changed between the plan. The last submission we have was pretty clean.
okay,
So I believe it's probably just a private matter.
Okay.
Up there. So,
all right,
yeah, they expect to be back next month.
all right. And since it was voluntarily tabled, we don't need any motion whatsoever up here, I presume.
Say no.
Okay. Well, 2 down, 3rd item, the grading ordinance amendment review. I was not at the last meeting when this was initially presented, so I'm going to,
You missed nothing. Everybody just said they wanted to look at it for another month.
okay.
So
Is there any public comment regarding this regarding this grading amendment? Is that a yes? Okay,
Right, 9635 Old Coomer Road, Allison Park, PA 15101. So I probably have some of the same questions that you have, like what prompted this change in the grading ordinance? Looking at other towns' grading ordinances, I don't see very many major and minor. So what's up with major and minor? And the size of the minor seems pretty big. And so how was that determined? The exceptions, there are a lot of exceptions that you don't usually see in other grading ordinances, and which isn't part of the current grading ordinance, including the cemetery. So what about the cemetery needs an exception? And the grading ordinance has increased by a number of pages. Looks like a pretty, it'd be helpful to have an engineer's comment to review it. And since there wasn't any presentation at the last meeting, be nice to hear what an engineer had to say. And so those are kind of my questions that, I probably share with you. So,
Okay, so-
thank you. Go ahead,
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just going to summarize. You wanted to know what is the rationale behind it?
Yeah.
You wanted to know the difference between the major and minor?
Yeah, why are we having that? Like,
Right,
what's the
and
point of
then,
that?
then there, you said there were a large number of exceptions. I can't answer it. If anybody can answer it, I'd be
Yeah,
welcome.
I mean, you were at the public hearing for this, right?
Well, if you recall,
I remember you had
had,
some comments about the charter at that hearing, yeah.
yeah, my comment was because we were having a public hearing before the planning commission reviewed it.
Right. So you were
And-
there for the presentation, right?
As a matter of fact, I'm not the planning commission, though. The planning commission hasn't had an opportunity to hear that presentation, have they?
Okay. So are you suggesting that I should do the public hearing presentation for this body, or are you asking these questions for your own information?
I'm asking for both.
Well, I don't think you have to.
I
deal
can
with it.
certainly do it again.
If you could answer her 3 or 4
Also on
questions,
video.
I would start with her 3 or 4 questions.
Yeah, well, so I mean, that's like the bulk of the presentation that we had seen previously, but I did it off the top of my head back then. Don't mind doing it again.
How long is the
Uh,
presentation?
I believe it took me about 15 minutes on the evening that you were there. How long would you say? it was?
I have no idea. Because I was puzzled why we were having a public hearing when the planning commission hadn't heard anything.
Huge distraction, I
Just to be clear
understand.
as well, with public comment, this board does not have to answer questions. It's not a Q&A. They can choose to answer your questions out of transparency, but just, you're not entitled to answer.
Oh, yeah.
during public
I am so sorry for being confused to think that I was entitled to something. I was saying that I thought they shared my questions. It wasn't a question of entitlement.
comment.
I'm-
These
I just
board
wanted
doesn't
to-
wait. That was
I
my
just
intention.
wanted
was
to
explaining that they do
clarify
not have
for
to
you
answer questions.
that I in no way feel entitled. After all, I live here, but I don't feel entitled. Thank you.
Dan, what would you like me to present to the commission?
If you could answer her 3 or 4 questions inside of 5, 6, 7 minutes, I think that would be a good start. I think it could be beneficial.
All right,
The basic
So
why
this-
behind it.
this is the slide in the public hearing presentation that deals with why we're updating our grading ordinance. So to truncate, a few years ago, there was a situation where somebody had basically moonscaped their whole residential lot. And there was nothing in our existing grading ordinance that could have clearly said whether or not a permit should have been triggered for that, because it just said whatever normal landscaping was. It didn't have standards on how much dirt was being removed or added to the site, depth of excavation, what normal landscaping is. That really was all discretionary. And aside from whether the person administering that ordinance is making a good discretionary call or not, that's not really the way that the town has tried to govern the permit processes over the last several years. We want people to be able to look at a piece of paper, that outlines the regulations and know what to expect when they're scoping a project.
Okay.
If, for no other reason. But so that's more clarity in when a permit is required. Separating minor and major grading work into different review tracks, as the public comment mentioned. There aren't necessarily that many communities that do this. I'd be happy to teach them how, since we thought it was the way that made sense. Wouldn't be a first for McCandless. So when looking at, the amount of review that is required by a full-on grading permit, essentially what we have on the books now is just the major version. And so that goes out to the town engineer. You've got to, have a designer prepare stamp drawings. The cost could become very prohibitive if one of the things that triggers moving from the minor to the major permit, like, excavation of 5 feet instead of 4, but everything else is pretty, calm. That's still going to go to the major review, but it's not going to be as intense. On the other hand, there are some things that somebody should be looking at all, just to make sure that even if it's more of a landscaping project, is it still meeting our slope, requirements? Are they practicing proper erosion and sedimentation controls? The things that, our building inspectors would be just looking at sort of in the normal course of looking at like a foundation review, for example. But if this is in the context of not pulling a building permit, they're just doing separate site work. Walls of certain heights can also trigger that. Anything over 4 feet typically requires a building permit, and that also kicks you into the major grading permit review now, because a building permit, wall, you're required engineering drawing. So it's not like we're making you retain a design professional that you wouldn't have already had to get when you're building a wall that tall. In the old code, it actually just bans walls of over 4 feet, which we found to be prohibitive, in sensible design. The other bullet points on here are pretty self-explanatory. Better organization of information. It kind of jumped around a little bit with, the standards are over here and here's what you need a permit, but then, oh, by the way, here are exceptions down here. We tried to make it flow more like, do I need a permit? But what about this weird situation? Do I really still need a permit? Well, here are the exceptions. Okay, well, I do need a permit. Which kind do I need? And now here are the requirements for each of those. So yeah, it kind of just tries to follow a little bit more of a narrative of how somebody would think about trying to learn about the process. Consistency with new zoning and development codes. That's like standardizing the modification request language to make sure it matches across the Saldo stormwater ordinance and grading code now. And just some terms that we relied on in the old code now are defined differently, or, there's a code reference that's in a different place in the new code. So we want to make those match up. And officially sending the appeals to the code appeals board that here's all of our other UCC and property maintenance appeals. Right now, there was a sort of vague, well, you could maybe go to council for this sort of appeal process, but that's not really a way that we review any other types of appeals at this point. So we wanted to standardize that more with the same other types of codes that would be considered by this board. So those are the big whys. I think I kind of got to the major and minor general overview of we're trying to be mindful of saving people money, not making them do too much, while also still having somebody take a look at the more minor stuff. These are the triggers for when a minor grading permit would be required. Filling in a basement, a footer, swimming pool. Those are things that are already typically authorized by a building permit. So you don't need to get another permit on top of that to just look at the same information. Major permit. This gets into, you have to pull an NPDES permit anyway for how much earth you're disturbing. This is something that the engineer should be looking at. Or if there are some projects that otherwise would meet the requirements for a minor grading permit, but for some reason we're looking at it and professionally saying could pose a hazard. Like, I don't know, maybe you're cutting into a slope that supports a town road, even if it isn't otherwise a large enough excavation to trigger the major permit. We have some discretion to bump you into the major review. I have a couple exemption examples here. Most of these were carried over from the old code, although there were a few that we spelled out more specifically because we were getting away from that very vague, like, anything more than normal landscaping, what exactly is that? So now we're defining things based on how much dirt you're moving, cubic yards of material coming in or out of the site. Just spelling out certain things more specifically that, like, either engineers or town council president had comments on, like making sure that public utilities, wells, tunnels that were part of public infrastructure didn't pull a separate grading permit. And again, something that's already been reviewed under an approved and compliant land development application that's gone through this process. We don't need you to pull another permit on top of that to prove the same thing that we already reviewed. I can talk about more specific exemptions in detail if anyone up here
No,
has
I don't think-
questions, but they're pretty,
Okay,
we thought that they encompass what we were really going for.
okay. Any questions from anybody on the planning commission?
Had a note versus a question.
Yes.
We have a variety of defined terms in there,
Mhm.
but in the text of it, they were not capitalized to indicate the use of a defined term. My suggestion would be, if it's a defined term, we should go through and make sure it's capitalized in the body so as to differentiate the regular word versus the defined word.
I would not be opposed to that. That's exactly what we did with the Saldo and the zoning, so that would be consistent if we were to go through and do that. And I mean, that's something that I wouldn't consider a material change.
No,
That's like,
I would
yeah,
not either.
just fixing a grammar point, basically. But yeah,
Okay, good point. Any other comments or notes or issues? Shelley?
I presume that these modifications have been worked on and put together completely with working with Gateway.
Yeah, we did
So-
work together to find that threshold, based off of other ordinances that we work with, as well as some guidance from the DEP that sets basically a 5,000 square foot, disturbance as a project that would require ENS control. So that's kind of the start of where we want to start looking at a project, because if we're requiring a plan to show ENS control, we want to know, is that plan being followed? What's going on that property? So that was kind of the basis of that, start to kind of kick you into a minor permit. But yeah, we did work with RJ on making some of these changes through like the past 2-3 years.
Yeah, we started it because the problem that we ran into the grading, and I think it was in Ward 6, that occurred prior to the zoning rewrite. But then once that really got rolling, it was like, maybe we should see what that, how things shake out over here, so we can know whether we have to move things over. Like, for example, a blasting ban used to be in our zoning code, which is just a weird place to have that. It should be in your grading ordinance, so that's moving over in this amendment adoption, just different things like that, that kind of, we ended up setting aside and deciding that it would be better to come back to it after we got the code done. And I am really glad in hindsight that happened, because we ended up, I think, organizing it a lot better from kind of just what we learned in that process.
Anything else, Shelley?
No,
Into your comments, are we then prepared and ready for a motion to recommend?
Oh.
Administratively?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes, you
Uh,
are welcome to do so.
All right, can I have a motion to adopt the recommendation, town council, the grading ordinance amendment? Al's filing motion, a second?
Second.
Second from Brendan, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All in favor?
Town council will either vote on that at their next meeting or the one at the end of March. I'm not sure if you have a preference, but you're technically allowed to do it at either. I'll leave that up to the town manager,
Okay.
since I will not be there.
All right, moving right along. The approval of the February 4, 2025 minutes. Any comments, edits, notes from anybody regarding the minutes? I will abstain since I was not there, but all in favor, say aye.
Oh, wait,
Right,
we
we
need
have to
motions.
Oh, we did, I'm sorry, the motion to approve.
Move.
So Sean is moving it, second? Al, second. Now, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
abstain.
Shelley and I are abstaining.
Because you guys weren't here,
Okay.
right? Both of you.
I was not here.
Yeah, okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, and then a yes from Mark, that's a 4
Yes.
to pass. Okay.
All right. And we have general public comment on the agenda for any other items, I suspect.
Ellen Wright, 9635 Old Coomer Road, Allison Park, PA 15101. I'd have to say first, I'm sad that you did approve it. I looked at the exceptions. The original grading ordinance has 2 exceptions, and the current, I'd have to count it out here for a second. It goes up to letter K. So there are a lot more exceptions in the new one, and it's a significant number of differences. The FILS permit that DEP requires, I've done a right to know request for the fill. And then somewhere on there, like when you're a third of the way down, it says that the town has to maintain a copy of the fill permit. The right to know said that the town doesn't keep that, nor does the town engineer. So the fill's a big deal. The town is out of compliance by not having that. It's like, it says instructions on the first page. Some of them I circled it and some of them, you move through the agenda fast. I could have been a little more prepared. So I'm just saying that it's a big deal what's in those field sites. DEP requires a permit, and the town is supposed to maintain it, or the town engineers, somebody's supposed to maintain it, and it's not being maintained. So I just wanted to share that with the planning commission.
All right. We'll certainly look into it.
Thank you. And then my last comment is, I've asked numerous times where the landslide map is also something else that's important for grading, excavation and fill. And in the definitions under landslide prone, which is 1306.23, it says it's in an appendix B. So I've gone to appendix B. And when I look at appendix B, it says it's the landscape planting guide. I can find nowhere in the zoning code where the landslide prone is. And I've asked a couple times at town council, nobody's gotten back to me. I guess I can put it in a formal letter, but something else that's important for excavation, grading and fill is to know where the landslide prone areas are in the town.
Does this look like what you saw for appendix B when you went to E code?
Nope.
Okay,
Where is it? 'Cause I've asked
It's
where it
here.
is.
right here, the attachment to 1306, which is the section that references.
So when I go, I look at land, is landowner right up above that?
Let's find out.
Yes, landowners above landslide prone in the
Yeah,
definition
okay.
section.
So, and then it says see appendix B,
Yeah, so where is the, how do I access that appendix? B? Because I'm
included as
not
an
finding it.
attachment to this article. Pops up right there.
So it's up above it.
It seems that it just took me to an editor's note at the bottom of
So-
L as well,
All right,
but
so
yes,
show
it
me
is
again where
also,
it came from, 'cause I've looked a couple times.
this is section 1306 definitions, which is where appendix B is referenced in the zoning code.
So it's up at the very beginning, it's not in the section. where
It
says
looks like
words
it's
in
at the
beginning.
top, and then it's also, I'm showing you two ways to get there. When you go to the reference
It's
button
not.
here, it hops you down to the bottom of L, which you can also click this link to do. So it's in two different places
All right,
on
so
here.
click that and see if it pulls up.
Well, I just did, but I can do it
You know
again.
what, if I didn't see it, I would have asked again.
Here, we can just do it a couple times.
Okay, so
Got
anywhere
it.
in the grading, and I know I'm not entitled to an answer, but anywhere in the grading ordinance, does it reference the landslide prone areas?
I'll have to double check. Let's find out. It does. Supervision of grading, landslide prone soil,
One sec, I have it right here.
1705.11. Supervision of grading.
Is it A, B, C, or D?
It's D.
That's it, thank you.
Is that it then?
Excuse me?
Is that it?
That's it,
Thank
thank you.
Any other public comment? Hearing none. We will have a motion to adjourn. John, second from Shelley. All in favor of adjournment? Aye. Opposed? Adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you very